Hello everyone, Susade Aknia. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, The Bookish Khmerican. Today I'm going to be doing my September 2020 reading wrap-up. So this September I read 6 books. I've read The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Lavender, Merciful Crow, Wicked Fox, Loveboat Taipei, Vicious Spirits, and My Lady Jane. If you want to see any of these books and the short reviews for them, then stay tuned. So how I'm going to review these are going to be by my least favorites to my most favorites. So the first book that I'm going to be talking about is The Merciful Crow, and this is by Margaret Owen. And this is about 3 characters. These are our 3 main characters named Phi, Tavin, and Prince Jasmir. And Prince Jasmir and Tavin, at the very beginning of the book, which is not a spoiler, it's like straight away, it's the first thing that happens in the book. They fake their deaths and to get away from like their castle and to get away from Queen Rosanna, because she wants them killed. And so they fake their deaths, and this whole story is like kind of surrounding like a plague that happens, and a lot of people are getting killed, but they're just like, so there's like this bird caste system, and so we have like the phoenix birds, like the phoenix caste, we have the crow caste, a hawk caste, so there's all these different kind of birds in this one caste. And then the crows are responsible for getting all the dead bodies of like all these people who got sick from the plague, and the crows are like the least like favorable caste in this whole system, and so like they're the one that is responsible for like picking up the dead bodies. And so like in return for like they're faking their deaths, like Prince Jasmir and Tavin, and in return for like creating like an ally with Phi and her group, with the crows, so they can get away from Queen Rosanna, who wants them dead. But then in return, Phi and her group wants they want to overthrow Queen Rosanna, but they want to have someone in power like Prince Jasmir, eventually, who is like going to create more of a representation for crows, because they're like the lowly caste. And so like this whole book is Tavin and Phi and Prince Jasmir creating that alliance and creating like that friendship and loyalty. It's a very character driven book, and so you don't get a lot of like huge action scenes, but that's like the thing that it was great about this book. But at the same time, I personally didn't think that it was my favorite book, and I felt like it was my least favorite out of these 6 books that I've read in September, because the writing style, it was really difficult to get into. It was almost like reading like the conversation like Scottish or British language. So I had to read it on audiobook, and I usually don't read these things on audiobook. Like I don't read books on audiobook, but this one in particular was so difficult for me to get into. So I used audiobook on Audible to read this one. I just really didn't love it, and also the world was so confusing, because we have like not only the bird caste system, but then they also travel to different places throughout the book, which was really hard to get into. So I rated this 1 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Lavender by Leslye Walton, and I'll put the picture somewhere here because I don't have the physical copy of the book. I read this on ebook through my library. And this book is about 3 different women across different generations. And so we have a grandmother, which her name is Emilian. We have a mother who is named Vivian Lavender. And then we have their daughter, which is named Ava Lavender. And so thing with this book is it's a magical realism book, a magical realism fantasy. And so Ava Lavender has like this kind of medical condition that's like strange and no one like knows what it is. And then she has like bird features, which are like feathers, and she has wings. And so throughout this book, like this like tells her story like across like 3 generations of from her mom's perspective, her grandma's perspective, and her perspective. But Ava Lavender is narrating this whole thing, and it's basically a story that is portraying all these different types of love. So we have like a love for a special child, we have family love, we have heartbreak, we have a love for baking, and we have unrequited love also. So different types of love. Be aware that if you're going to read this book, there is scenes of like abuse, rape, there's like thoughts of suicide. So if you are sensitive to those kind of topics, then this may not be the book for you. I enjoy the concept and style of this writing. It's very lyrical and very beautiful. At the same time, I didn't really love this book as a whole because there's really not much happening, and it's a very, very character-driven story. And I also thought that the characters didn't have as much reflection as like other characters would have in something like this kind of story. Extremely appreciated how the story identifies different types of love and kind of has this message that love is not always like perfect, and it's actually perfectly messy. If I had to describe this book in 3 words, I would say it's beautiful, it's lyrical, and it's bittersweet. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is Wicked Fox, and this is by Kat Cho, and this is actually a duology. This is the first book, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. This is a this book is set in Korean folklore, and it's about an 18-year-old girl named Gu Mi-young, and she lives in Seoul, and she is a gomiho. That's her dark secret. She's a gomiho is a 9-tailed fox. And so this is kind of like a Korean legend or folklore that this book explores. And she basically consumes the ji, or the energy or the life force of men during the full moon. And she has to feed on that. That's like how she gets her energy. So she doesn't really eat anything. That's her way of feeding and eating. And then her life gets intertwined eventually with a schoolboy that she meets at school named Ji-hoon, and he is like always like trying to be her friend, and he is like so nice to her, but then like at times like this book can, like, the characters can get a little bit annoying, and I think that was the reason why I gave it a 3 out of 5. And like, I felt like Mi-young was just like this passive character that didn't really have much to say. And like throughout the book, she had like character development for sure, and she was like going from like this kind of self-doubt, and like she just was trying to figure out her identity of like who she is, and because she's thinking she's inherently bad all the time. And I think in the beginning that came off as annoying, and she came off as monster-like, but then throughout the novel she really redeemed herself for me, and I think that was like what, like, the character development was pretty good in this book. But then also Ji-hoon at the beginning, he was very annoying sometimes, because he would be always like insisting like his friendship with like Mi-young, and like even though she just wanted to like stay away from him, he just kept trying to be friends with her. And so that was like the most annoying part of like their kind of character development, but over time it got so much better. And so like she kind of like loses like Mi-young she loses her Gyo-u Gus. it's really hard to say. Gyo and it's like a bead that like she has to keep with her, otherwise she's going to die. And so yeah, I don't want to give too much away because this book, like I would be giving spoilers and I don't want to do that. I want you guys to like really read this. But this book is like so much, like if you're really interested in Korean folklore, if you're such into like the Korean dramas, like love stories, but with like a little bit of fantasy, this is like the perfect book for you. It's also very transportive and transformative, and it has a great setting to it because it's in Seoul, so in Seoul, South Korea. So I really highly recommend this book. Another 3 out of 5 star book is Loveboat Taipei, and this is by Abigail and this book is about a girl named Ever Wong, and she is a Taiwanese American who lives in Ohio, and she goes to a educational program called Loveboat, and this book is set in Taipei, Taiwan. And she ever goes to this Loveboat program that's meant for Taiwanese Americans, and it's supposed to be like this cultural excursion to learn more about the country and learn more about your like Taiwanese identity. So she's from a really strict family background, and her like parents like they want her to do pre-med, but she doesn't want to. She loves dancing. She has such a huge passion for it, which is seen throughout this book. And so like when she's in this Loveboat program, then she like finds all these like other friends who are also doing this program. They're also Taiwanese American, and she's really trying to figure out her identity and who she is. And her parents, like, they sign her up for these classes, which are calligraphy and Chinese language, but she doesn't want to take those classes and she's not interested in it. She'd rather do the fan dancing classes or the line dancing classes that all her other friends are doing. So she is like, all of these like kids in this Loveboat program are like escaping at night, and they're like going clubbing or they're going to like other places, and then eventually she gets tired of that scene, so she goes with her friend to a photography session, and she just like and she also finds like a dance studio to go to. So she's really trying to figure out like how she can incorporate her love for dancing throughout this story. Another book that I've read is Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho, and this is the second companion novel to the Wicked Fox series. This is the duology that I was talking about earlier, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This one I loved so much more than the first book because it's just so much more atmospheric and the characters are so much better, because the first book we see characters Mi-young and Ji-hoon, and that's the focus of the story. But in this one, it is focused more on the supporting characters, which are So-min and Junwoo. And So-min is Mi-young and Ji-hoon's classmate, and Junwoo is a dokebi, or a goblin. In this book, we not only meet So-min and Junwoo, but we also meet another character that's new. Her name is Sin-hai, and there's another character we also meet who is like the Reaper. He's responsible for like if you die, then he comes and like gets your soul, and like he's the Reaper of souls, and in Korean that is called Jo Sung Saja. And so those are the characters that we all meet in this book. And basically in this book, Ji-hoon, I think the Sin-hai, the new character that we meet in this book, takes over Ji-hoon's body. And so she's kind of walking around in his body, and she's basically trying to take revenge on Junwoo because she is the ex-lover of Junwoo in their like past life before, but Junwoo, like something happened and Junwoo like put her in a vase, but in this story she gets released from this vase, and then she like pretty much tries to take revenge for like what Junwoo did to her. And so she goes into his friend's body, who is Ji-hoon. This whole book is like they're trying to figure out how to take Sin-hai's like soul out of Ji-hoon to save him. And then at the same time, Mi-young is trying to like figure out her relationship with her mother. I loved the fantastical elements of this. I loved it so much better than the first book. I love the characters so much more. They're just so much more multi-dimensional and dynamic compared to Mi-young and Ji-hoon. Mi-young and Ji-hoon are in this book, but they're not like the highlights of it. They're more kind of passive in this book. The banter between Junwoo and So-min is so entertaining, and I loved, like, every time they talk to each other, I just loved it. So-min is such a strong-willed character in this book, and she's kind of this motherly figure to everyone, and she wants to take care of everyone, and it has something to do with her past and her relationship with her mother. And Junwoo is like, he's the dokebi goblin, so but he's so much more than like his goblin like self. He is so multi-dimensional. He is so poetic, and this story is almost like a modern version of like Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare. This book, again, like Wicked Fox, but even better, is atmospheric, transportive, and transformative, and you'll just really, really want to pick this up. The story keeps you guessing. There's some action in here, so it's like, I highly recommend this, and I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I want to talk about today is My Lady Jane. This is by 3 authors, so we have Cynthia Han, Brodi Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. And this is part of a trilogy that's called the Lady Janie series. And the Lady Janie series consists of this one, My Lady Jane, My Calamity Jane, and My Plain Jane. I haven't read My Calamity Jane or My Plain Jane yet, but I'm getting to it. And but this particular book I gave 5 out of 5 stars. This was my favorite read of September, and I think of all time. It's just so entertaining. And this one is about 3 characters. We follow the 3 perspectives of them, and it's My Lady Jane Grey. Like, Lady Jane Grey is her name. And then her husband, Gifford Dudley, and Edward, King Edward, who is the cousin of Lady Jane Grey. So we follow their 3 perspectives in here. And this world is set in, like, they have 2 different types of people. There's the Ethians, which is spelled Edians, and they can transform into different animals. And then we have the Verities, which are people who cannot transform into animals. And then, like, this is like where the fantasy element happens. But initially, Lady Jane Grey is like, okay, so the 3 authors take like all these historical, like, real people such as Lady Jane Grey throughout history, and then they kind of revamp it and make it funnier, more entertaining, and humorous. And they also give the characters like a happier ending. So this is like a historical fiction fantasy, but Lady Jane Grey was actually like Queen of England, like in real life. And then they took her story because her real story was that she was queen for only 9 days, and then she got guillotined or beheaded. and then so they make her like alive in this story, and she basically like gets married to her husband named Gifford Dudley, and once in a while he turns into a horse like every single day. But at night he is human. So he is an Ethian, the people who can transform into an animal form. And then they're basically the like King Edward gets poisoned or something by like by his sister Mary, and then like he's trying to kind of overthrow Mary. Like these three characters are getting intertwined with each other, and they're trying to overthrow Mary, and then get King Edward back in power. Extremely love this book so much. It's so comedic and entertaining and action-packed, and it's so atmospheric, and it's just an all-around great story. And I think that these authors did an amazing job with the writing, and it has everything that you would want. It has action and romance and all those kinds of elements that you would want in a book. Out of every book that I've talked about throughout this whole video, I recommend My Lady Jane the most, because I think you'll get like a really good laugh out loud moment like here and there. The world is really great and the characters are amazing. So in this video, I've talked about 6 of the reads that I've read in September, and so I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you so much for watching. Akunjran, like, jojet, subscribe, and comment below. Recommend your favorite September reads. Thank you so much again, Akunjran, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye.